Weinberg Wednesday has alliteration to it.
That it does.
I don't know what the T would be.
Match up.
I don't know what the T would be to match up with Dave Weinberg, but I do know this. There's a lot of people out here at Chickies and Pete's. I said to you earlier in the show, it seems like we're the only two people that are working today. Dave Weinberg working as he was up at the NovaCare Complex to hear what the Eagles had to say leading into their big matchup. Dave, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well, Pete. Actually, I'm still here.
Great. Long days for you. And I do know it's bitterly cold, right? I mean, the cold was, let's start with that. The cold weather was a lot of people's excuse for why Nick Foles played so poorly. Doesn't sound like he's giving any excuses for why he played poorly against the Raiders.
No, actually, to his credit, he kind of owned up to not playing well. He refused to blame it on the weather, which was kind of nice to see. I personally think that it did have something to do with it. I mean, if you notice, Derek Carr didn't have the best game either, and I think it's due to not only just the cold, but the fact that it was so windy down there. It really made it difficult to throw the football. It made it hard for the receivers to catch it, and I think it had part of it to do with it. But Nick definitely didn't play very well, regardless.
Yeah, I think we had Scott Grayson on in studio with us the other day, and he described the wind as coming from Citizens Bank Park toward 95. But even though you guys sit in the press box, you still have to walk from your car to the complex in the stadium, and you know where the wind's going. And I got a lot of tweets from people that said that might have been a factor. That said, Dave, what was your takeaway from that Raiders game, regardless of what the weather was? Because there were a lot of people shaking their heads when that game got finished, even though the Eagles won.
Yeah, I mean, bottom line is they did win, which is what you wanted to see. They wound up clinching home field advantage, which was their major goal coming in, going into the game. So, I mean, granted, it was a very ugly way to do it, but I think you have to be concerned about the offense, of course. But I'm kind of going to give them. I'm personally going to kind of give them a pass because of the conditions. I don't think that Nick is the bust and the bum that everybody's trying to make him out to be. I mean, nobody was saying that when he was throwing 4 touchdown passes against the Giants a week earlier. So I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt, at least for until the next game. Defense played very well, 5 turnovers. You can't really argue with that. I mean, they gave up some big plays. They had a 63-yard touchdown to Amari Cooper. Another one got negated by a holding call. But you got to give him a lot of credit to Jake Elliott. I mean, the guy's money no matter what the conditions, what the weather, what the distance. He always seems to find a way to get it done, and they have a lot of confidence in him, and rightfully so.
Dave Weinberg with us, Eagles beat writer for the Press of Atlantic City. Before we went to break, Dave, I was trying to do the math in my head about what year you joined the Eagles beat. What year is this for you now?
This is 25.
Magical 25, because I saw a tweet in the last hour that was counting up home win streaks by Eagles quarterbacks. It had Randall at 20, it had Donovan McNabb at 10, but then it had Nick Foles at 9. Who would have known?
Yeah. I mean, people forget that he had a pretty good year in 2013, especially, and he struggled a little bit his rookie year in 2012. But he's won. Well, I guess you're not counting the playoff games against the Saints, but ever since other than that, he's probably 9-0. As far as regular season games go. So, yeah, he has a way of getting it done at home so far anyway.
So, Dave, we've spent a lot of the time today talking about the basic argument of rest versus rust, and that seems to be the dilemma facing Doug Peterson this week of how much do you play the starters? Are they going to be in there? Foles, I know today, said he expects to play, but how much will he play? Well, how much do you think is the right amount for those guys, and how would you tackle the rest versus rust conundrum if you were the head coach?
If I were the head coach, they wouldn't play at all. I don't see the point. I mean, you're not going, whatever you're going to accomplish in a quarter or a half, that's not going to do you any good 2 weeks from now. The only thing that can happen is somebody gets hurt, and then you're down to Nate Sudfeld as your quarterback. I mean, I know granted you have to play some guys, just because of depth purposes, you only have 46 guys in uniform. But if I'm the coach, I do what Andy Reid did in 2004, and that means I pretty much maybe play the guy a series or two, and then I sit him back on the bench and just rest and wait for the playoff game to start.
Yeah, Dave, when you talk about the rest for this coming weekend, to me, I think you have to play Nick Foles for at least a half. Just to get his reps underneath him, because he was sitting out the entire season behind Carson Wentz. I mean, do you think it would actually, I know you're against it, but wouldn't you think it would serve a to give him some more confidence, considering if he plays a half and he looks better with his wide receivers, wouldn't that make the offense, click more and give them more confidence going into the divisional round 2 weeks? Because then you're talking about 3 weeks of layoff.
Yeah, that's true, but I disagree with you, but I think their confidence is already high. They're not. They weren't really that disappointed in what happened against the Raiders. They have full confidence in Nick. They feel that he's the guy that's going to be able to help them get to the Super Bowl. Sorry, and I just don't see where. What if he goes like 2 for 10 in the first half? Would you bring him back out for the third quarter just to see if you can get his confidence back? I mean, I just don't see how any success against the Cowboys team that, quite frankly, doesn't care either. They're out of the playoff hunt. They just can't wait to get back to Dallas and get on with their off season. I just don't see. It's just kind of like a glorified exhibition game for me. I just don't see what you can accomplish by playing the guys that for a half or whatever.
So let's go back to Monday. So let's go back to Monday's game against the Raiders. When you have to look at why Nick Foles was missing guys all over the place. I mean, he was missing guys high. He was getting chased out of the pocket. I know he wasn't getting too much help from his wide receivers or even his offensive line. But what do you think the biggest problem was for Nick Foles on Monday night against the Raiders compared to how well he played against the Giants 2 weeks ago?
That's a tough question. He did have some ball sail high on him. Again, I don't want to be wrong because he didn't, but it was brutally cold and brutally windy out there. And I was actually listening to Mike Quick earlier in the day on a show, and he was saying how difficult it is for a wide receiver or running back to actually just catch the football in conditions like that. Your hands are frozen, they're numb. The ball is really hard and slick. It makes it that much more difficult not only for a quarterback to get a grip on the football, throw it, but for the receivers to catch it as well. So I hate to make excuses for him, but I'm kind of like dismissing it because like I said, Derek Carr he had a terrible game as well, and he's generally considered one of the better quarterbacks in the AFC. So I quite frankly, I just don't place a whole lot of stock in what happened on Monday night. I'm just not that concerned.
Now, when you look ahead to the playoffs now, obviously Nick Foles is not Carson Wentz, and that's blatantly obvious, and they have to rely more on the defense and the running game a bit, and also that Nick Foles does not turn over the ball, which would lead to more success for the offense. But now that they have to maybe focus on the running game a bit more, do you expect that now? And can we expect J.J. to get maybe 20, 25 touches in a playoff game, or maybe get a couple in this weekend to try to get, or to at least stave off some rust? I mean, do we expect more J.J. now once the playoffs come rolling around?
You would think so. I mean, stand the reason that you have three very productive and effective running backs. You would think that you would just try to run the ball down people's throats. And if you can establish the run, that makes the play action pass that much more effective. So, I would think it stands to reason that you would rely on your running game. Again, it's the weather's cold, it's windy, conditions are not going to be the best, and the more you can rely on your running backs, the better off you are. Especially like early in the game, if you can establish like a quick lead and then just use those guys to pound the ball, run down the clock, and establish your will. That would make them that much more successful, I think.
Dave Weinberg with us, Eagles beat writer for the Press of Atlantic City. Follow him on Twitter at PressACWeinberg. Dave, you said something interesting to Nick there a minute ago that piqued my interest, and my ears perked up a little bit when you said it's almost like an exhibition game. The Cowboys don't have anything to play for. You don't think that Ezekiel Elliott or Dak Prescott want to play some role as spoiler to make Eagles fans give them agina going into that dead week?
I think the rivalry has a little bit to do with it. I mean, what are you spoiling? They've already got home field advantage. I mean, I guess they want to go 8-0 at home. And that'll be the first time since like 1992, I think, that they've accomplished that. But in the grand scheme of things, I don't think he just has a whole lot to play for here. I mean, the players talk all week about, anytime you get on the field, you have to compete. You want to play for pride. You want to get that 8-0. You want to finish as the number 1 ranked rushing defense, which they're going to do anyway. Maybe you don't want Elliott to get to his 1,000 yards. I think he's 120. They haven't allowed a running back for 100 yards all year. So I guess there's that incentive. But just by and large, I'm sorry to rain on your parade, people. I just don't see what the big deal is about this game.
Rain away, buddy. As long as it's not snow and cold, I'm fine with it. A warm rain I'll take. Hey, joking, and I'm joking here when I say this, but what did you say to tick off Lane Johnson? What's that whole story?
I think it's what he said to himself or what he said to us. After the game on Monday night, he was very upset about the 2 holding calls that he got called on and insisted, put it in the paper. Khalil Mack didn't even sniff the quarterback. Those 2 holding penalties were BS, and he was adamant that we write it, and we did. And then I guess he might have caught some flack from Doug Peterson or from the league, and now all of a sudden he's turning into this silent guy who won't talk to anybody.
So he didn't talk to.
I wouldn't expect it to last though. He's one of the nicer guys on the team, and he likes to have his voice heard. So I think that's going to end pretty soon.
Yeah, it's pretty funny when you're looking at a team where Ronald Darby didn't speak after the Giants game, and then people came after him on Twitter, and then he came out. It's almost like, and Lane Johnson's been here for a while. I can remember when Lane Johnson was at this Chickies and Pete's in Egg Harbor Township with us on a Eagles show way back in the day, and he has to understand the Philly fan base and how the Negadelphia works, right? I mean, this shouldn't be new.
No, it shouldn't be. Like you said, there's some new guys, like you said, like Darby's in his first year here, maybe some other guys who aren't used to it. But, yeah, Lane's been here long enough that he knows how this works. He knows that the fans are going to get on him when he makes a mistake, and, they're going to be behind him when he plays well. So you just have to take it with a grain of salt when you're not playing well. And his mistake was really complaining about it. Just take your medicine, get ready for the next game. I should have done better. Sorry, I didn't. I'll try to make up for it next time and move on. He's a Pro Bowl at right tackle, so everybody knows he's good. So you can't really complain when things just don't go your way one week.
Let me throw a couple players out here and tell me who they got the Eagles' return on investment. Which one was higher, Patrick Robinson or Chris Long?
Patrick Robinson. He's the best slot corner in the league, in my view. To put him inside like that, a veteran who would kind of bounce around a little bit. I talked with him pretty much at length yesterday about his so-called turnaround. I mean, he was kind of searching for a job, wondering if his career was over. Eagles gave him a shot, and I think he's been one of the major keys. I mean, nothing against Chris Long. He's been a very valuable part of the defense as well. But Patrick Robinson, I think, has been a huge factor. They weren't sure what they were going to do with that slot corner position, and the way that he has stepped up and performed has been really impressive.
Yeah, we're joking about social media and fans' reaction. Chris Long got a dose of that, right, when he got up after the strip sack and ran away from a live football.
Yeah. Although he's kind of a good-natured guy, and he was one of the first who he even went on Twitter and apologized for it. But I quite frankly didn't think he had anything to apologize for. I mean, he had a strip sack. He was excited. He really didn't see where the ball was. I mean, I didn't think that big of a deal about it. But I guess some fans were looking for something to criticize. I don't know.
We're always looking at stuff before the games and leading up to the games. So let me get into this. John McMullen had brought it up, that Sean McVay's comments. I saw you brought it up. Another beat writer brought it up, that the Rams are probably going to rest some of their starters. They're taking this tactic where it's pretty obvious that they're trying to strategize to engineer it so they have to face the Eagles. A couple weeks ago when they played the Eagles with a healthy Carson Wentz, you wouldn't think that they'd try to go to Philadelphia and face the Eagles. Is this an indication, Dave, that Sean McVay and the Rams don't have any respect for the number 1 seed, or is he a genius?
That's a little harsh, but I think his main concern was, unlike the Eagles,
I think it's even more imperative on him to rest his guys because he doesn't have that first-round bye. He's got to go, or he's got to come back and play next week. So the fresher that you can have Jared Goff and Todd Gurley and Aaron Donald and those guys, the better off you're going to be. I mean, I don't know if you can look that far ahead. I don't know if you can overlook your wild card round game automatically and assume who you're going to play in the second round. But I got to think, given the way that they almost beat the Eagles, with Carson Wentz for most of the game. I think they have to be feeling pretty confident about the chances of coming to Philly and pulling out a win.
Dave, you mentioned resting and getting back to the Eagles. On the defensive side, I know you mentioned you don't want to see any starters play in this game, but it's looking like the Eagles are going to put out the starters, at least on the offensive side of the football. I mean, do you expect them, if they're going to do that on offense, are there going to be a lot of starters on defense playing Sunday, or are they going to end up resting more guys and get the backup some work?
I think they have the advantage on defense where they even have more depth there. But they kind of use the rotation quite a bit as it is. So I think they might just cut back the starters' workload a tad. I mean, there's going to be some guys. Brandon Graham couldn't play, I don't think. They have to rest his ankle. So you're going to see, like, Chris Longmore, or maybe not him. He's kind of a veteran too, but a lot of Sarah Barnett, obviously, Vinny Curry. And there's some backup defensive tackles there too, like Elijah Qualls and Justin Zio. Maybe they'll get some more work rather than the top 4 defensive tackles. And I think you'll maybe see like Dana Watkins playing some safety instead of Malcolm or Rodney McLeod. They do have to. I think they'll play some, but I think they'll cut back their rotation just a little bit and try and get more younger guys in there, because they have that advantage of having extra depth on the defense.
Dave, you're at the NovaCare Complex on a regular basis. I'm just the guy that pours through the transcript when it comes in my email. But since we're on the defensive side of the football, I do notice that every couple weeks or so there's a question about Sidney Jones and what's the story with him. What's your take on how they're handling Sidney Jones? Are they doing the right thing with him, the way they're handling that? Are they being tight-lipped for a reason? What's your feel on Sidney Jones?
I think they knew all along that they were going to try and keep him out till next year if they could, and it turns out that that's okay. I mean, they had the serious injury to Darby, but they had enough guys step in to fill that void. Sidney's made really good progress from what I understand, and you see him around the locker room all the time. I've talked to him a couple times, and he seems pretty enthusiastic about the progress that he's made, but I don't know that he's quite ready to. I think the window for his IR or activating him this week, so they're going to have to make a decision. But I would be really surprised if they activate him. I think all along they wanted to just take this year to let him rest, recuperate from that torn Achilles, get comfortable with the defense, sit in all the meetings, sit in all the games, so he kind of knows his way around the things. So I think that was the right move too. I mean, you don't want to rush the guy back from a serious injury like that unless you absolutely have to.
Dave Weinberg with us, the Eagles beat writer for the Press of Atlantic City. Follow him on Twitter at PressACWeinberg. So this is your silver anniversary, Dave, of covering this team. You've done this long enough to you have that feel, buddy. You kind of know, is this a Super Bowl team, right? So that I'll throw that question to you as you look at the way the playoffs are ahead, because that's what we're doing right now. It doesn't feel like a Dallas week, does it to you? I mean, normally Dallas week, there's so many storylines. It doesn't have that normal Cowboys-Eagles feel to it, so we might as well talk about the NFC playoffs and the road the Eagles might have to face. Does it feel like a Super Bowl is in their grasp, at least getting there?
Boy, you're really putting me on the spot here. They don't look like a Super Bowl team at the moment, but I don't know who does. I think there's probably 3 or 4 NFC teams that are equally capable of getting to Minnesota for the Super Bowl. And you got to put the Eagles in that group. I would not consider them the favorite at the moment. The Rams are the team. I think they're the team to beat right now. Vikings are playing very well. I think you got to really be worried about the Saints too, depending on what happens in the wild card rounds, of course. I mean, the Eagles, they've proven. I mean, they're 13-2. You can't really argue with that. And they've done it all kinds of ways. They've won close games. They've won blowouts. They've won on their offense, their defense, their special teams. And when they're at their peak in those 3 phases, they're as good as anybody. Just the question remains if they can be at their peak at the right time.
It is funny, the little moves that Howie Roseman and Joe Douglas make, like when they brought Brian Bremen back the other week, and then all of a sudden the special teams blows up with the punt block and the the extra point block, and there was a third block in there that I'm forgetting. But just those little moves, right? It kind of gives you that feel like, maybe, I mean, you're right. And I'm sorry I put you on the spot, but you're the silver anniversary guy, and I'm just the guy that knows
not
the
just
silver
my hair.
anniversary. Hey, I grew a duster, Dave, in honor of you, buddy. That picture you always had, from back in your mustache days. You're now mustache-less, and Gil would not let up until I finally grew one. So I grew it for No Shave November, and then I decided when we got to December that it's cold enough that I might as well keep it on for a little while. I can tell you this, Dave Weinberg, all the girls are like, "Ew, yuck," and all the guys are like, "Cool stash."
Yeah, that's pretty much the way it goes most of the time.
So do you have any mustache tips for me before we let you go? I mean, I'm a first-time wearer here. I need all the help I can get.
No, I don't.
I shaved mine off like about 10 years ago.
I would just say, keep all the crumbs out of it that you can.
Keep it clean and keep it trim, says Dave Weinberg. All right, so it was just players in the locker room today. Doug will speak tomorrow. Do you anticipate, it's funny, I always think this is funny, Dave, as the week goes on, like the post recap the day after the game, all the questions tend to gravitate, like, what'd you see on the film, this, that, the other thing. By the time they get to Friday, the questions always seem to be like probing questions of, what are you going to do with this? His answers get shorter and shorter as the week goes on. Does that mean he's just tired of you by Friday?
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. I think this Friday's a little bit different, though. I would expect him to maybe just reveal a little bit maybe about his plans as far as playing time,
Especially for Nick are concerned. But then again, I wouldn't be surprised if he just says, it's a game time decision, which he's been known to do too. So maybe he'll be keeping us waiting until
Sunday. But it would seem like it would make sense a little bit to just maybe give a hint as far as the rotations for the players are concerned for Sunday.
Just give us a hint. That's all we're asking. Dave Weinberg, the Press of Atlantic City beat reporter for the Eagles, a good Hall of Fame boxing writer, too, at Press of AC. Weinberg is his Twitter handle. And, Dave, I can't thank you enough for coming on with us on Thursday. We'll get you back to your Weinberg Wednesdays next week, buddy.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it, guys. And Happy New Year.